tips and tricks that I'm going to share are universal. They can be used for any pitch of tent or tarp if you're using guy lines. So you see why you don't want to put your shelter to the directly with this. See why you don't want to put your lean-to with the back directly to the wind. Now, this is permanent shelter. I can't move it, but if you want to get the most out of tarp camping, it's important to learn the basics of site selection, avoiding deadfalls, wind, bugs, staying close enough to water that you can get to it, but farther enough away that you don't have a breeding ground for mosquitoes. The easiest way to set up tarps, of course, is to have two trees with a ridgeline. You can use your trekking poles if you have them, but it's always nice to just have trees that are the right distance apart. Of course, you're going to want flat ground. You're going to want a view, but sometimes you don't get that. If the ground is soft, that's great, and then you can use that just as your bed and have an air mattress or even an easy rest, which is what I use. If the ground is a little harder or if it's a little bit uneven, you might have to construct a bed. There you have to balance the leave no trace ethic with your bushcraft skills and what materials are available and what materials that it's ethical to use. I just tie a temporary slip there, and then I tie a trucker's hitch to give it real tension. These are pretty close together, these trees, so my tarp is a 10-foot tarp. So I'm going to have to keep this as tight to the tree as possible. Now the tips that I'm going to share are useful no matter what kind of camp that you have, but I just use them specifically for tarp camping because I generally only use a tarp and I have guy lines, and those are useful. Setting up the tarp or anything like that, you can use whatever knots that you prefer, or hitches, or even equipment if you like. If you like carabiners better, or S-beaners or whatever. The knots that I tie are generally the same no matter what pitch that I use, whether it's a modified lean-to A-frame or modified A-frame, plow point or pyramid, no matter what the setup. You might choose sunny, just for shade, to fly out an A-frame. We can also steepen the angle, bringing in the tie-outs a little bit. It'll shed rain better, and even with the open ends, having a 10-foot tarp, you can still stay plenty dry. Do a long baker, it's not tightened yet, by widening out the sides, pulling out the middle, and pulling the flaps on both sides in. It's not a great pitch for wind. If this was in a forest, fire out front, it'd be quite good. You can modify the arrowhead. The room. Every modification requires adjustment on your guy lines, so that's why it's important that a lot of your tie-outs be tied to adjustable guy lines. The open front tarp tent gives you working room in the front, long sleeping area, fairly small space, but if you're minimalist, that's all you need. With a square tarp, this pitch isn't the greatest. Almost impossible to get it taut. What we need is a higher, tight ridgeline to pull those panels up. Predominant wind is usually from the northwest, but today for some reason, because it's spring, it's coming from the southwest. So our ridgeline was set up basically facing north-northeast, just because the trees were that way. So to make this pitch effective with the 10 by 10 tarp, we set it under the ridgeline. So when the wind comes in, it's going to billow in that side, but I have a hack for that. A rare earth magnet with a hook, an eye on it, and a washer. That's all it is. Find the center of the panel, snap it in place. Guy it out. Now to take the plow point as an example, you got a lot of ridgeline here. I extended the ridgeline a little bit because the distance between the trees. This could be used for hanging gear, clothesline, something like that. So why not take advantage of that? I could make a prusik like I did over here. Put the toggle on. Or I could do something a little bit simpler. Just loosen up the trucker's hitch a little bit. Put a marlin spike hitch in the line. Now that'll tighten up on itself. Give it a hanger. Tighten this back up. Toggle goes back in. So now you got very solid. Hang something from it. Got a little carabiner. That'll hang on. You don't need a mountain climbing, rock climbing carabiner. I've gone away from using carabiners a lot, and now I only really, if I don't think I'm going to be hoisting something, which is really the only thing I need it for, something solid, like say I'm stringing up a deer, I want some sort of pulley, carabiner's the way to go. But generally camping, I don't need a heavy duty carabiner. Say you want more. Again, as before, make a marlin spike hitch, fairly big. We're going to pull the bottom part through it. Pull it tight. You want to pull on all four parts of the knot to get all the slip out. And now you have a fixed loop. You can hang things too. And then tighten back up your ridgeline. This ridgeline would work for a clothesline. Most of it is horizontal. The part that's inclined would need some sort of clothespin to hold the clothes in place. And then that means you have to make a clothespin or carry them into the bush. What if you didn't need a clothespin at all? You won't need a really long clothesline. But you'll have, at least I have, pretty long Hanks paracord. So what we can do is double it, put a twist in it. twist, you can stick clothes through. Whenever you can, fly out a vestibule on the lee side. Extra headroom, extra working area is always welcome. It makes your life a lot easier in camp, especially if you're stuck in there for a few days of rain. How you pack your tarp makes a big difference on how easy it is to set up. Stuff it with the center point first, then I put all the hanks that are neatly wrapped up. Then my ridgeline, then my stakes, and I always leave this little carabiner on the center seam tie out, so I can clip it to the ridgeline right away once I have the ridgeline. Another thing to remember is always resist the urge to just drop a stake. Put it in your pocket. Doesn't matter how red it is. It could be bright orange for all I care. You can lose them. I've done it. So you want to be more comfortable? Maybe you can make the bed. These are aspen saplings. Aspen propagates by suckering, so you're not really cutting a tree. And when you find these amongst Saskatoons, it's good to weed them out. Bottom of the part of the bed is wolf willow and ghosteberry. This is a pasture, just trying to clean it up. You probably need something to confine the saplings to the width of your bed. It's good to be able to distinguish between Saskatoons, chokecherry, wolf willow, and poplar saplings. Poplar, very springy. They have all these buds here, and they'll be green. Even though they're whitish when they're big trees, they'll start out green. And they're very springy and full of life, which is good for your bed. You really have to balance your needs with what's good for the environment. You don't want to just strip it bare, obviously, and everyone can't do that. This is for wilderness camping, where there's absolutely very little human impact. And when you leave, you disperse it so that no one knows that you were there. Stick one stick underneath where your head will be, or head and shoulders will be. one underneath your knees. Really, that'd be good enough for me. I'm just gonna put my wool blanket on it, roll back and forth a little bit, compress it, see how it feels. I've had way worse mattresses. It's kind of a joke, but I've had some pretty bad ones. If I didn't have my half a sleeping pad, I could get a bunch of dried grass from all over the place. I just have to be careful of the rose bushes. But I got it. Usually I just sleep on that on the ground over top of polyethylene drop sheet. So I would slip my sleeping bag on the inside here if I had a fire, just to protect it from sparks.